refuge and body, sapavas, or renewing them. The next day we dedicate to reflecting on death. It's very important in the Buddhist tradition, or any spiritual tradition, to remember death. The Dharma isn't some kind of therapy to help you with your life in the sense of the material sense of your life. It's there to show you the true meaning of your life, the context of your life. It's not a matter of, filling in as much as you can during this brief moment that you have as much fun as possible, and then pop, gone. If you have such a view, if your life isn't much fun, why not just go pop sooner? What's the difference? It's the logic of suicide, really, isn't it? So Dharma isn't about, in some ways, and this is often said, Dharma is not about this life. I think, what? What else do we have? Why would we kind of put off our concern for this life to think about something that we don't know about in the future? That seems mad, and it would be mad if it meant that. It doesn't mean that. It means it's not about just this short life. It's about life, what it means in itself, why we're here at all, what we are at all. And the only sure thing we know about our little life is it's going to end. It's the only sure thing. And the other sure thing is we don't know when. Yeah? So that life, in this sense of this little short life, there's only two sure things about it. It's going to end, and we don't know when. So is there life, if you like, with a capital L? Is there meaning to life, actually to life, of which this short moment is integral? It's not as if it's not as if we're rejecting this life. This life is integral to life with a capital L. And that's what Dharma's about. And we can discover what that life with a capital L is through looking at our own experience here and now. This is what Rizin Shikpa was stressing yesterday. All we have is our life, our awareness. And I would say with a capital L, capital A. And what we take to be our momentary life, or our momentary awareness, is, if you like, our life and awareness with a little a and a little L. So thinking about death really sharpens us up, really cuts through the distraction of this life with a small L. From where we're looking, it seems to be all there is, this little life of ours. And it takes, and it can take, all our time and energy to maintain it, to kind of... It's amazing, it's always been the case that the everyday tasks just multiply and multiply and multiply. they're never done. They never were done. Every housewife back to the cave age must have had that same sense that, it's never enough. You've never done enough. There's always more you could do, more you should do. It's become particularly heightened, I think, in our day and age, where it's really difficult to say can't, because someone will say to you, yes, you can. There's this gadget, there's this possibility, there's that possibility. You could go there, you could go there, you could help these people, you could help those people, you could, you're to blame for every catastrophe there is in the world because you didn't do enough. Because you could have done. You could have done more, always you could have done more. It's very exaggerated now, but it's always been the case. So you find in all the scriptures of every tradition, really, these renunciates, those who've given up worldly activities, saying, you're never going to reach the end of all your busyness. And when the Lord of Death appears at your deathbed and says, here I am, you're just going to say, yes, but I'm not ready, I haven't finished it. I've got all this to do. So thinking of death cuts through that distraction, because it is a huge distraction, isn't it? One always thinks, I'll focus more on the Dharma when I've done all this list of things. And such an attitude is hopeless. It's really hopeless. It's got to be now. We've got to live our life with that awareness of life with a capital L, and one of our best reminders of that is death. Because everything that's distracting us will just go pop. It just won't be there. It'll be like a dream. Doesn't matter if it was a good dream, a bad dream, a long dream, a short dream. It's completely irrelevant. Happy dream, miserable dream. It's gone. Pop, like a bubble. So given that, what should we do with this life in order to honour life with a capital L? And that's what we should do. We should honour it. Find out what it is. And then honour it. Align with it. Then when the bubble goes pop, you're ready. You're just ready. Because they're ready to meet the Lord of Death. Yeah? I'm ready. What next? I will continue with my life with a capital L. There is no birth and death to life with a capital L. In some ways you can't even say it's eternal, because that would imply, to an ordinary way of thinking, it was just this that got longer and 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 longer. It's kind of still bound by the idea of time. So perhaps instead of eternal, one could say timeless. Cut through the idea of time altogether. It's timeless. So that means dropping all the assumptions based on the belief that time is something a common sense idea of time that we act on and believe in. It's a huge assumption to drop, isn't it? Yesterday I was talking about the assumption of big and small. That's difficult to drop, isn't it? A little insect has the same mind as me, and I'm much bigger and more important. But actually, if the mind isn't anywhere, isn't anything, what are we talking about? Same with time. If life with a capital L is timeless, what does birth and death mean? In Buddhist tradition, it's fundamental to the whole way of thinking that birth and death is simply grasping. As soon as you birth is grasping at the five skandhas, grasping at body, feelings, sensations, perceptions, all the mental events and so on. Consciousness itself, it's like grasping at it, trying to fix it, thinking you know what it is, turning it into life with a little L. You've grasped it. As soon as you've grasped it, you're going to suffer, because it's not something you can grasp. Life with capital L can't be grasped. So once you've grasped, once you've taken birth in that way, even if it's only in moment by moment, there's only one thing that's going to happen, for sure. It's going to fall apart. For sure. It's the only thing that's sure. It'll fall apart. So if you grasped it, and you don't want to let go, that state of mind is like fear, panic, horror, agony, despair, you name it. Depression. It's all about give me something to hold on to. Well, you could grasp something else, but it would be the same story all over again. So if you want life with a capital L, then you've got to give up life with a little l. Just give it up. And thinking about death really helps to get that sense of proportion, that sense of, if you like, the irrelevance of what we take to be our life with a little l. It's irrelevant. Why not just give it up now? When I die, I'm going to have to give it up. So what's the big deal now? But in all the affairs, if you like, of our life with a little l, that element of life with a big L is there. It never goes anywhere. So you can use every situation in your life with a little l, if you like, as an opportunity to recognise life with a big L. So you've always got time to practice Dharma. There's no such thing as I have no time to practice Dharma. We have no excuse. Ever. That might mean we need to look at what we mean by practicing Dharma. And our problem is we're so distracted. We're so distracted by life with a small l. And when we say we haven't got time to practice Dharma, what we're really saying is, I haven't focused or drawn together enough energy to overcome that distraction. So I forget all the time. I can see, perhaps in theory, I could turn everything in my life into Dharma, but I know, if I'm honest, I don't. And it's because I don't really understand that deeply enough. And to understand it deeply enough, I have to give up distraction long enough to deepen my understanding. It's like chicken and egg, isn't it? I haven't given myself enough time to deepen my understanding, so I'm too distracted to find the time to do that. So, yeah, that's the essence of the problem, and it's the same for everyone, and it's always been the same for everybody, all down the ages, and in every spiritual tradition. This is the lament of every teacher of Dharma, every practitioner of Dharma. I'm so distracted, I hardly give Dharma a moment of thought. You might think somebody like myself, who's spent all my adult life completely devoting my life to Dharma. But when I think to myself, out of every hour of my life, how much of it was spent really living the Dharma and how much was spent in distraction, the proportions are not very impressive. And yet, even if I can do it really, really strongly for just a few minutes every hour, that feels fantastic, and so feels like really fantastic, which it is for a being like myself, like an ordinary being like myself. It is fantastic, even to do that once a day, or even once a week is fantastic, compared with everything else that's buzzing around like mad. Anyone who can stop even a little bit, or even maybe once in a lifetime, it actually sets something in motion that can actually turn samsara, turn away from samsara, get some sort of purchase on a way out. So it's not to be sniffed at, but it's also very serious when you realise just how difficult it is to turn things around. So the good news is even a little bit makes a huge difference. And the bad news is that, even a lot is still going to take a long time. But we do have the nature of reality on our side. It is actually not moving into more delusion, it's moving in line with reality. And reality obviously is going to be more powerful than delusion, isn't it? It has to be. Delusion has to maintain itself the whole time. Whereas reality just can rest and just be itself. So it's got the potential to win easily. But we really work hard on our delusion. We really work hard on it. And we feel too much reality coming in. And we quickly look for distraction. These days we call it, what do we call them? Oh, this is the word we use. Addictions, don't we? We call them addictions. Obsessions and addictions. But it's the same old thing. We're looking for a distraction. Too much reality, quick distraction. Let's have something to drink. Let's stick. Let's put our heads in front of a television or a screen, or let's do something to distract ourselves. We don't want too much reality. Might even be boring. But maybe that's our greatest fear. Might die of boredom. It's an interesting fear, isn't it? I need something to hold on to make myself real, keep my delusion going. Take birth of something else quickly. But death comes without warning. The wonderful thing about the news is you see this reported every day, don't you? You don't need it reported every day, you just need to reflect on it and you know it's happening. It's happening every day. Sudden deaths. We really have no idea when it's going to strike. And that can be quite liberating. Quite liberating to think, am I ready? How would I die if I died now? What kind of confidence have I in the Dharma, in the true nature of my being? Would I panic? Would I only panic? Would I panic a bit but fundamentally feel it was all right? Which is quite significant, actually. And that's why we're practicing Dharma. If you practice Dharma bearing that in mind, you'll get it right. You won't be practicing Dharma in order to be a good person who'll get brownie points or be, a valued member of the group. You're not practicing Dharma for that. You're practicing Dharma so that you can face life, if you like. And death puts you face to face with life with a capital L. We call it death, but in a funny way, it's actually with life. Absolute life. Are we ready for it? They describe it in the texts about what happens at the time of death. They describe it as being brought face to face with the clear light nature of mind. But the clear light nature of mind isn't something that's been dreamt up to present to you at death. It's just another name for the same thing. The timeless truth of the reality of your being. It's what you are. And it's such a shock. We just pass out. Apparently, it appears as we fall asleep. If you're a great yogin and you can catch the moment, you can rest in that nature in your sleep, which is amazing, isn't it? Tells you something about what sleep actually is. And when you're a great practitioner, then you rest in it all the time. So actually, what's death? Just passing from one way of manifesting into another way of manifesting, which was happening anyway. So it's not like we're reflecting on death in order to make ourselves feel kind of oh dear, I'm going to die one day, isn't that terrible, what shall I do? It's like, hang on, I'm attached to so much stuff that is actually just going to disappear, and the life that is my being, I'm neglecting it, I'm ignoring it, I'm not even relating to it, so that the danger is, when I die, I'm going to carry on being totally distracted. And then who knows where I'll end up. And we get lost very fast, actually. When we have a stable life, like we have here, some of you might think, what, my life's stable? Yeah, it's pretty stable. There's so many things you can be sure of, temporarily at least. Stable enough. You're not suffering from being dispossessed, we live in a state where we can get food, shelter, clothing. We're people, most people, I mean, they say, you know, it's a degenerate time, but most people are very kind. People acting violently on the street is actually, in most places, I mean, I know there are some in inner city areas where this isn't the case, but basically you feel safe to walk on the streets. You feel safe in your bed at night. People will, generally speaking, you can approach people, ask them the way. If something happens, people will come and help. It's really, it's really not bad. You have got the opportunity to practice Dharma. It only takes civil war to break out, and that all changes. It only takes any kind of disaster, doesn't it? Everything can just suddenly change. And when the circumstances change, we change, don't we? If someone was about to, I don't know, even strike a dog, but certainly strike a child or threaten all of you, I would become a different person. I could see myself becoming extremely violent in defence of the helpless, for example. If I thought, you know, that was all I could do, and if I didn't actually act violently, my whole state of mind would be on high alert. And it could very quickly feel like hell. Very, very quickly. So you imagine when this little life is finished, you know, we've hit death, we've missed the moment of recognizing our true nature, we're plunged into goodness knows where, something starts to happen that actually drives us to completely nuts. And we're there, busily making karma in some terrible situation, and who knows when we'll find our way back to a situation where we at least have enough peace of mind that we can start to try to recognize the true meaning of life in our every moment. So that's something to feel very amazed by, actually, when you think how many beings there are that have that opportunity or that inclination, and how does that arise? Why should that ever arise? And what are the conditions that are necessary for that to arise? And that's where we can start using our power of volition, our power of choice, our power of aligning with our deepest heart wish to make sure that that's what we're in alignment with. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness, including me. That should cover it, shouldn't it? And as Rinzin Shikpo said, all we have is awareness. And awareness isn't just passive, you know, knowing things like some sort of receptor. Awareness is actually the source of the universe. It is the volition that actually creates the universe. And we have direct access to that. So what's our most fundamental volition? And even that gets covered over by our distraction. We get distracted by our strategies, if you like. I might want happiness for all beings, but actually I can't help very many, so I'll just focus on a few. And gosh, they've got all sorts of problems and that's taking up all my time. No, I can't afford to give to anything else. I'm just going to focus on this one. Oh, that one's gone bad, so I can, sort of forget that. And somehow in the end you've covered over that what you actually wanted was to bring happiness to all beings. And instead you're thinking just about surviving yourself, probably, or maybe one or two people around you. Just focused on that, having forgotten that great longing for all beings to be happy and have the cause of happiness. And if actually we have the power to bring that volition to fruition, what are we doing forgetting that? It's just craziness. We mustn't forget it. We mustn't let ourselves forget it. To keep realigning with it and not letting our despair or our fear or our worry or our distractions go for anything less. Because the nature of volition is that because the universe is nothing other than, if you like, awareness or whatever you want to call it, I'm starting to think we should call it intelligence. Since it's nothing other than intelligence, where that intelligence actually wakes up and aligns itself with the welfare of all beings and the ultimate welfare of all beings that goes beyond birth and death, that actually is the greatest power in the universe. It actually will continue to be active in the universe until all beings are awakened. And in fact, that's what we're riding on now. That's why we're here able to make that aspiration, is because it's there in the universe and never finishes and never ends until we are awakened. And that is what's awakening us, and that's what's triggered that in us, awakened that in us. So we become that power. As we align with it, we become that power. And we bring it to those connections, those unique connections that we have. We're integral to the whole nature of the universe, and we have unique connections with all other beings. And we can help them in a unique way. Our wishes and our aspirations are powerful. So easy for that power to get covered over by despair, isn't it? What can I do? I'm so small. That little fly in the drink, he's very small. But is he really so small? Are we really so small? Small is just the way we think. Thinking is just something that comes and goes. Changes all the time. We're not small. Doesn't make any sense to say we're small. You can't measure us. You can't find anything that is essentially us that you could measure. Small doesn't mean anything. So stop thinking you're small. And you don't even need to think you're big. You're just integral. You're not even a part. You're not a small part of the whole. You're integral to the whole. And the whole doesn't have a size, and it doesn't have parts. So all that death does is part us from what is familiar and casts us sort of into the space of who knows what next, which is actually every moment, since we might die at any moment. So there's a tremendous letting go, here and now, letting go when you think of death. Are we ready for it? And that's what I want you to discuss after I finish this talk. Are you ready for it? What's that basic underlying nature of your confidence? Is it about being little me? Or is it about belonging to I could say belonging to the lineage, because I'm using lineage as a kind of word for our heart connections. Our connections with awakening, with the mandala of awakening. The connections that go beyond birth and death. So you could say, well, how do you know anything goes beyond birth and death? Well, I know life with a little L ends completely at death. And that life with a little L begins with grasping. And I know that when there's no grasping, there's no impermanence. There's no time. So, what would it mean to say it ended? So what goes beyond birth and death is what's timeless, endless, life with a capital L. That's what the Buddha set out to discover. This is what he calls nirvana, the cessation of suffering, because suffering is all associated with grasping. No more grasping, no more suffering. But that doesn't mean, the image is given of going out like a light, but it obviously doesn't mean you snuff it. Otherwise, you don't need Dharma, you just need suicide. It wouldn't be difficult to go out like a light, would it? If that's all there was. It would be very easy. No, life with a capital L doesn't go anywhere. That's why it's the indestructible heart essence. And it's what connects us to that, and we know it in our hearts. We already know in our hearts. All the heart language shows that we actually know something in our hearts. But there's more to us. There's more to love than simply conditions and impermanence and dependent arising and all this kind of, what do people call it, flux, or fancy words they use for it. And it's all changing, it's all lovely because it's all changing, isn't it? That's makes it all meaningless unless one has a very subtle understanding of what that might mean. And you think of what people will do for love, and how we talk about love. We use words, and I often say this, don't I, that we use love forever. Because we sense something in our hearts, when there's genuine love in our hearts, it doesn't belong to life with a little L, it belongs to life with a capital L, doesn't it? That's why we can say forever. Because it's actually about what isn't in time, and it's what we know, because it's life with a capital L. If we can die with that love in our heart, that is life. and all the qualities that are associated with that. Wonderful qualities associated with that. So now is the time to think what heart connections mean. Because if we're going to remain aligned with life with a capital L, our heart connections, we've got to honour them now. And this is why we talk in terms of the mandala of awakening, the Sangha, the Buddha Dharma Sangha, as a kind of those connections that are not in time, but we become strongly associated and integral to that manifestation, as it were, so that the chances of that being what we encounter when we die become very strong. Even if we don't immediately reconnect, they're there in the fabric, if you like, in the fabric of our being, that they're going to show up in some form or other to draw us back to life with a capital L. So now's the time to think about that and to honour that, honour the lineage, honour those who've brought the Dharma into the world, the Buddha, the teachers, the practitioners, our own particular connections in particular, because obviously if we've got connections, we must have, these must be the ones that are close to us, mustn't they? Because we're already connected. So build on your strengths. If you've got something, you don't sort of think, well, I've got this here, but I think there's more of the same elsewhere, so I go elsewhere. You don't do that, do you? You think, well, I've got this. This is what I need. I'll build on what I've got. It's not totally obvious these days, is it, to us in the West? It's kind of always been obvious, I think, to most human societies, traditionally, but it's become far from obvious to us. We've become much more, it's almost like we see ourselves as individuals and we have endless choices, and there's a lot of emphasis on our rights and other people's responsibilities. But always as individuals, isn't it? Not really having a sense of the whole of our mandala. That actually we're integral to a mandala, or various mandalas, but particularly a Dharma mandala that's we can actually take birth in that mandala in such a way that it goes beyond birth and death. It's our deepest connections, our deepest heart connections, and there's power in that. That's an idea that it's going to take a while, I think, to catch on in the West, because we've lost touch with it so much. I'm just trying to think of the words. Maybe we should sing it. Maybe that comes with that one.
A14. Page A14.
Have you all got it? Okay.
Death comes without warning. It may come today, parting me from all that is familiar and all those I love. Now is the time to think of what heart connections mean. Now is the time to think of what goes beyond birth and death. Now is the time to discover and learn to trust the openness, clarity and sensitivity of my being, the indestructible heart essence of all beings. I have today to prepare. Worldly attachments are useless, as are anger and delusion. Now is the time to let them go, and rest relaxed in my own true nature. What use am I to others if I'm no use to myself? How can I liberate them if I cannot liberate myself? May I and all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May I and all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I and all beings have the happiness of complete awakening that will never diminish or fail. Thus may we abide in great equanimity, unruffled by attachment and aversion, and with equal love for all beings.
Maybe that's enough. So, if you'd like to discuss in pairs, I think it's quite good, then you really can talk in more depth. Everybody gets a chance to talk in depth if you do it in pairs, I think, if that's practical. Thinking about if you were to die today, what sort of confidence you have, and what you could do to use today to prepare. And then carry that over into what I can do in my life to prepare, how I can use my life to prepare. Okay.